soaring commodity prices, broad financial penalties, and the possibility of further restrictions on Russian energy supplies following its invasion of Ukraine threaten to cripple the global economy. But how severe are these effects? And are there ways in place to mitigate these effects? In today's video, we're going to explore the effects of a war on the global economy. But first, please leave a like, subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos from Traverse Media. The most devastating consequences of any war or armed conflict in the world are the loss of life and economic stability. For global economic stability, all countries are now interdependent on commodities and must maintain the supply chain. As a result, the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine has not only set our economies back decades, but has also caused a significant supply chain crisis, resulting in chaos, uncertainty, and inflation. A disruption in economic stability has the most negative impact on the poorest members of society. Most members expected Vladimir Putin to get away with invading Ukraine, and they may have been right. Surely many believe that Russia's massive force would conquer Kyiv and other key cities in a matter of days, and the West would respond with its typical trepidation, handing Russia a little slap on the wrist. Now here we are, 13 days later, with Kyiv and Kharkiv still standing and invading forces stymied by robust Ukrainian opposition, aided by a swift infusion of Western weaponry and severe logistical issues. At the same time, Western sanctions against Russia's economy are plainly having a negative impact and may have become even more so. All of this obviously change. Russian forces might regroup and renew the attack, and weak-kneed Western governments could begin to ease sanctions. Putin, for the time being, is facing far more serious repercussions than he could have anticipated. Standing up to hostility, however, isn't cheap. The events in Ukraine and Russia in particular will have a significant impact on the global economy. The issue is, how serious is this situation? Our best guess is that it will be bad but not disastrous. The Putin shock in particular appears unlikely to be as severe as the oil shocks that roiled the global economy in the 1970s. Commodity prices altered in the 1970s are still wreaking havoc on the global economy. Russia is a major oil and natural gas exporter, and Russia and Ukraine are or were major wheat exporters. As a result, the war will have a significant impact on both energy and food prices. But we will get to that in a few. To begin with, so far, Europe's sanctions on Russia have now extended to oil and gas exports, as the United States has banned oil imports from Russia. But this won't matter much because America and Russia may purchase and sell elsewhere. However, markets are still behaving as though supply will be interrupted. Shell, which recently purchased Russian oil at a discount, has apologized and stated that it would not do it again. As a result, the actual inflation-adjusted price of oil has now reached the level reached after the 1979 Iranian Revolution. The executive order signed by President Joe Biden bans crude and oil products, coal, and liquefied natural gas imports from Russia with a 45-day wind-down period for existing contracts. It also prohibits U.S. firms from investing in Russia's energy sector. The UK stated it too will phase out oil imports, with businesses being allowed until the end of the year to halt down supplies. Canada had previously issued a similar restriction, despite the fact that it imports very little Russian petroleum. However, this is not an attempt to impose global embargo on Russian oil shipments, as happened most recently in 2018 when Iranian oil was largely shut off from global markets. For the time being, the EU, which is significantly more reliant on Russian energy, is refusing to follow suit. Secondary sanctions would be required for a larger ban, which would very certainly involve cooperation from EU nations as well as India and China, Russia's top buyers. Oil prices are frequently affected by war because global supply systems are jeopardized, and usually this is the main target in an instance of war in an oil-producing country. The Gulf War of 1990, for example, resulted in higher oil prices. Prices jumped from $21 per barrel in July to $46 in mid-October, a post-invasion high. Similarly, because Russia is a major supplier of oil and gas and is subject to a slew of economic sanctions, prices are expected to rise across the globe as a result of a probable commodity scarcity. During wartime, we frequently observe a significant increase in public sector debt. Because there was a patriotic support for the war effort, the government is ready to borrow far more than normal. When the United Kingdom ruled over more than half of the world, the First and Second World Wars were nightmares for it, causing a massive hole in its pocket. Following the war, the debt continued to rise because of the need to rebuild infrastructure and establish welfare programs. The national debt of the United Kingdom reached 150% at the end of the World War II, but by the early 1950s, it had risen to 240%. While it is tempting to believe that good times would follow the end of the war, the reality is far from ideal. The war's aftermath isn't always so favorable. Germany's economy was devastated by Hitler's war, and the country was responsible for all restitution expenditures. These squabbles over German hyperinflation in the 1920s created the roots for future political radicalism and conflicts. The Allies, on the other hand, did not repeat this error after World War II. The United States provided considerable aid to Western Europe, assisting in the reconstruction efforts and resulting in Europe's and Germany's economic miracles. So what's next? Before we continue, have you subscribed to Traverse Media? If not, please do, so for more amazing content like this one. Well, to be honest, the magnitude of this oil price increase perplexes everyone. Russia accounts for roughly 11% of global output. Moreover, despite Western sanctions, Russia will very certainly find a way to sell a major portion of its oil. However, the global economy is no longer as reliant on oil as it once was. The intensity of oil consumption, the number of barrels consumed per real dollar of GDP, is half of what it was in the 1970s. Some may ask, what about the use of natural gas? A large portion of Europe's supply comes from Russia. However, because gas use is very seasonal, the impact of a Russian interruption will not only be seen until late this year, allowing Europe time to take steps to reduce its vulnerability. Overall, the crisis caused by Putin will be significant, but not catastrophic. The main concern, at least for the United States, is political. You wouldn't think Republicans could demand that we cease buying Russian oil while also attacking President Biden over rising gas costs. That is in fact what is going to happen. Aside from politics, food may be a more pressing concern than energy. Russia and Ukraine together exported more than a fifth of world's wheat before Putin's conflict. Russia has been sanctioned and Ukraine has devolved into a war zone. Wheat prices had risen from less than $8 a bushel before Russia began massing its soldiers around Ukraine to approximately $13 now, which is not surprising. Because advanced country consumers spend such a tiny fraction of their income on food, this price increase will be harsh but manageable in rich countries like North America and Europe. The shock will be far more severe in poorer countries, where food accounts for a larger portion of household finances. So what's next? While the US and UK prohibitions may have a little impact on their own, Richard Nephew, a senior research scholar at Columbia University Center, believes the underlying importance is that the White House has indicated it is ready to go farther with sanctions. Used cars and other durable goods will be cheaper. Workers in the United States must go to work regardless of how much gasoline costs. Because of the greater cost of petrol, employees will postpone purchases of durable goods such as vehicles, laptops, refrigerators, furniture, and gadgets, decreasing costs. The Russian economy is being ripped apart by sanctions. Russian powers headed by the United States have imposed restrictions ranging from a freeze on the Russian central bank's abroad assets to a prohibition on buying sparkling wine from a Crimean bottler, because overseas banks are rightfully afraid of the US authorities. The chilling effect is particularly frigid in the payment sector. Because of their extraterritorial reach and the dollar's supremacy as an international currency, US prosecutors and regulators have the power to make life very difficult for institutions that engage in sanction evasion. Following the expulsion of 7 large lenders including VTB, VEB, and Otprity, some big international banks are quietly shunning Russian peers who remain on the international payments messaging system SWIFT. This would make payments to Gazprom Bank, the gas giant's banking arm, and Russia's third largest lender more difficult. And the story gets even more interesting. But before we continue, have you subscribed to Traverse Media? If not, please do so for more amazing content like this one. One may deduce how war affects the global economy by looking at prior conflicts in various countries in the world. For example, during the US invasion of Iraq, oil prices skyrocketed. They cut overall US income GDP by around $274 billion. While the government expects young people to labor on a war footing, the number of persons available for employment drops dramatically as a result of the conflict. One may believe that this is a chance for job seekers to earn more money. However, this is rarely the case. This is due to the fact that governments are focusing their resources on the conflict and less on their people. Furthermore, a current conflict is a red herring that the country's population would be subjected to increased taxation in the future. Apart from the immediate necessity to rebuild infrastructure in an emergency, the government begins to incur higher psychological expenses as a result of the war's permanent scarring of the population. This impact extends to other countries as well as due to the higher number of refugees and taxes focused on strengthening the national defense. According to the Polish border guard, more than 1.2 million Ukrainian refugees have fled to Poland, with 141,500 arriving on Monday. Refugees from the conflict have also arrived in neighboring nations. A total of 210,239 refugees have been admitted by European nations, with Hungary hosting 191,348 and Slovakia hosting 140,745, according to the most recent UN statistics. The Japanese government announced intentions to accept Ukrainian migrants and stated on Tuesday that it has already allowed 8 people to enter the nation. Children are arriving on their own, without the backing of their families, in an ever-increasing child safety problem in countries. Families unable to leave Ukraine but concerned about their children's safety from ground attacks and aerial bombs are reportedly sending them across the border alone. Thousands more had been torn apart from their loved ones as they attempted to evacuate their houses amid the crisis. Many of the lone travelers are under the age of 14, and their condition is often alarming. The International Rescue Committee informed DW that long-term humanitarian measures would be needed to handle the significant number of migrants as a result of the conflict in Ukraine. If the conflict were to end immediately, there would still be a massive humanitarian crisis in Ukraine, which would push people to flee for their own safety. And that's all for today's video. Thanks for watching. Did you like the video? What do you think about the effects of this war? Do you see Russia putting a pause on this anytime soon? Comment below. Let's engage. Also, please leave a like and subscribe for more amazing content. Goodbye. See you in the next one.